Barb, can you switch my name to Vera Napati?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Did I get that right, Vera? Thank you. All set, Sabian.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, as I think more folks may trickle in, but let's go ahead and get started. Barb, could you please share your screen for the presentation?
Yes, and we have a couple items on the agenda. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do those first.
Could you go to the agenda slide?
Sure. Yes, thank you. One moment.
Got it. Okay, so the October 22nd Security and Ad Hoc Committee, I believe we've met a few times before. I'm just going to go ahead and jump into the agenda for tonight. We're going to hear from student and staff about the current state of schools and try and carve out a roadmap for what we want them to look like for restorative justice practices within our schools. Yeah, there we go. So quick approval of minutes from our October 8th meeting, reviewing our charge statement and purpose and timeline. We're going to have updated responses to questions that y'all have posed for us from Mark. We're going to incorporate, again, school staff and student voice into our current state of restorative justice practices and philosophies in our schools and ways that we can incentivize our schools to do better in getting, a more holistic philosophy of restorative justice in our schools. Next meeting, we're going to start making connections, really emphasize at this meeting, going forward, we want to really start making connections to concrete policies and budget recommendations that we want to put before the whole board. So that includes what do we need to continue to work on, what needs to be revised or maybe removed, and then what needs to be strengthened. And then we'll confirm the next meeting dates and times and proposed agenda items, any brainstorming around next proposed agenda items for our next meeting, and then we will wrap up. So let's go ahead and review the charge. So it's going to read this. The charge of the ad hoc committee is with examining safety and security options for our high schools related to the removal of SROs out of MMSD high schools. The work of the committee will focus on budget and policy recommendations to the board. So we have considered information from the 2016 ad hoc committee. We have reviewed that and detailed, what was good, what was bad, or what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep. We are considering and have considered safety and security high school systems that would remain the same, revised, strengthened, or changed. What needs to be in place when schools reopen from a policy and budgetary perspective to resource staff with what they need to do this important restorative justice work. We need to consider resources needed to support safe schools. So, those two things will be the main drivers and themes for our next meetings. What policies do we want to implement and how do we want to allocate resources to achieve our goals? And in that vein, we will review and make recommendations regarding current Board of Education policies regarding safety, security, and police involvement. So those are 4224, 4147, and 4440. After this meeting, we will send those out again for your review in anticipation for the next 3 meetings or so. So we can make some recommendations on how we want to amend those policies for the better. We want to expand 4400 to include more details of required police involvement, either by state statute and relationship with MPD for Act 81 and 143 response to mandated reporting requirements. So dealing with some state statute requirements. So this has been our timeline so far. We started on August 13th. We made introductions and reviewed the ad hoc purpose and revised that as necessary. On August 27th, we reviewed the safety and security assistant progress, reviewed the arrest citation report, and 2018 SRO ad hoc recommendation. That's the same thing as the 2016 one. They completed their work and sent it to review in 2018. September 10th, we really had a in-depth conversation about what school safety means. We unpacked that concept, school safety for who, at whose expense, and how do we want to have a more holistic, equitable vision of school safety for every student and family member and teacher or staff member in our schools. We also reviewed policies regarding 4147, 4224, 4400. October 8th, we had a really good presentation on restorative justice from our partners at the YWCA, Time Bank, and MMSD. We talked about our current and future state, so where we're at and ideally where we want to go and how we get there through policy and resource allocation. And then today, we are going to review voice and listen to voice from school staff and students. And then plans to move forward, what needs to be strengthened and what additional information do you or we need to move forward. So, this is a question that feel free to pop up, or you can raise your hand using the Zoom function. If you click the participant list, how can the district be more proactive in promoting healthy student behavior, restorative justice philosophies among students and staff, and a vision of an equitable school safety and climate? What do we want to strive towards? What's a vision of safety for all students, or safety and belonging for all students? Does anyone have thoughts immediately off the top of their head to those questions? Feel free to chime in. I can't see all hands raised, or again, use the hand raising function on the participant.
Oh, can I jump in maybe?
Please do.
Yeah, thank you, because I cannot see the rest of participants, so I don't know if anybody was jumping in or had their hand raised. So, okay, I just sent some examples to Savion and Gloria about other places in the country where restorative justice has been implemented for many years, like Denver and Oakland and Minnesota. And these districts also terminated their contracts with police as well. One of the things that they focus on a lot was, is in belonging, in being proactive, in whole school implementation, in centering restorative justice as the main focus for the work that they're going to be doing, making it like, as I said, proactive. And they did a lot of policy work, like the board passed resolutions that actually made restorative justice at the way that we're going to be responding to harm, and they put resources. For example, Minnesota school district put $300,000 to create pilot of school implementation. And when I'm saying like pilot school implementation, I'm not talking about like little pieces and pockets, like how right now it's happening in our district. But really fully implemented, the hiring of, and there's also strong community partnership. There's also strong community partnership with nonprofits and community organizations into the implementation of this work. Just wanted to bring that up here because I think that we need to also look at other places, as you said last time, and it has to be like more holistic. Like it's not only what can we do, we have to change policy, we have to invest resources, we have to center restorative justice, and we have to partner with community organizations. And also the stress that in order that they have like the time that they put in their reports that takes to actually start seeing a change in culture from punitive to restorative and all that is from 3 to 5 years. So we need time, and that's another thing. So I wanted to bring that up here. And also it would be great, that's something that I would like to propose. It would be great if we include at least one person from the 2-people team of the Restorative Justice from MSD to be part of like also this conversation. And we're going to be looking into how would we integrate this in the school, and just a proposal too.
Thank you. I think that would be a great idea. Do you mind if we send this whole document? It's kind of a survey of what Oakland, Minnesota, and Denver did to the whole group.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. And it's really like a glimpse, no? It's not like a report, so don't worry, like you can like go through this. We wanted to make it like short and sweet. And if you want to dig more into it, you can go into, there are multiple reports of multiple grants of multiple processes of implementation, and in these 3 districts. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I think I just interrupted someone. Oh, never mind. Yeah, just to take a piece from the email, highlight that these districts have done a good job in centering restorative justice work, fully funding it, partnering with community organizations, and changing policy. So I do think it would be worth our time to, in between as homework, to just review some of the actions that these districts have taken as they have gone through or are going through similar changes that we're going through. So what can we learn from what these districts have done in Denver, Oakland, and Minnesota?
Yeah, and sorry to continue speaking, but I just wanted also to highlight that these districts have been doing this work for years already before that. That's why they have already like reports and pilots, and officially pilots, because doing a pilot means that that school has the autonomy of not having to respond to a BEP, for example, that they have the autonomy to utilize restorative justice as the main way of healing in their school. And that's not something that we have been able, for example, in our case, in having like a restorative justice coordinator in one of our schools. That's something that we still have not had, that autonomy, that funding to make sure that all the teachers and all the staff can be trained, fully trained in like 3-day intensive work and being paid for their time, right, in doing that. So that's something that in our district has not happened. So we are like really kind of like behind these districts to when we think about where they are at right now. And yeah, so also having that in mind.
Yeah, I think about the restorative justice pilot in 2013 at La Follette that I participated in. How can we really acknowledge the work and how central students are, for example? And as we move forward, can we offer students credit or stipend for participating in restorative justice classes and being restorative justice circle practitioners in our schools to kind of empower those networks that have the familiarity with what happens in our schools that we have traditionally relied upon police for.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Lori, I noticed that you were given a thumbs up to some of Euhania's comments. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I just agree with what AU is saying in terms of there are models for implementation in other places, so we don't necessarily need to recreate the wheel here. And also the differences between some of those places and some of what we've been doing in MMSD, even though we have been doing some restorative justice work within MMSD for a while, it's a little bit more pocketed here and there. So yeah, just lifting up what she's saying around the capacity, the whole school implementation, the proactive way of doing it, and the resources to be able to do it and support the adults in the building who are also trying to do it, both through giving them time to do it and compensation.
Anyone else before we move on?
I
Oh,
wanted
I
to
do
add
it.
into that. Oh,
You
sorry.
can go ahead.
Oh, yeah. How about Martha, then Anthony?
Okay. I've been talking with a few families on how they felt that kids who have IEPs with behavior plans in place, like what can be done under those circumstances. And the families I talked to are uh, different racial backgrounds as well, to try and get more perspective on that. But if some kind of had to explore what can be done because IEP tables is a protected space. If we can establish some sort of either a welcoming relationship with the people who are going to be involved in an environment that's going to bring others in for support staff with anybody that we have in the school, because there's only certain people allowed to be at that table, but establishing some sort of connection there to really understand the child and their needs would be beneficial from the beginning of a school year than establishing a relationship from constant involvement during the school year.
Yeah, especially, at the beginning of the school year and starting that early instead of just reacting to something in a stressful situation.
Right.
It's on you, Anthony.
Well, I was just gonna say, when thinking about this stuff, to me, it always comes back to like the culture in the district, the culture within school buildings, because we can say we want to have a few people here who are implementing these things, but even when it comes to, things that are happening in classrooms between teachers and students, right? If everybody's not embracing this philosophy, this approach, this way of thinking, this way of life, then that's where we have those, as Lori said, those pockets. Because, yeah, I know MMSD has something that deals with restorative justice, but I don't see what they're doing. I don't come in contact with it daily. I know the YWCA, I know other people that are doing work. And so I think how you can begin to be more proactive is making sure that if this is something we really believe in from a district level, that it is coming from top down, because it's too isolated, it's in too many pockets, and you're not trusting the people who do it well and who've been doing it for a while, especially if they're not within MMSD, which I think, right, is always a problem. If you're with the Fortune 500 company, we always say we want to put the best people to do the best job in that position. But it seems like within this district, that's not necessarily the case. We don't always want to put the person who would do the best at this job in this position for whatever reason. So I think tapping into people like, Mr. Flowers, who's been doing this work for a while, and then his connection with community organizations like YWCA or, Briar Patch and different places, like it has to be a culture. If it's just these individuals coming in and doing it, I think it's hit and miss like it has been. And I've witnessed it, seen it, experienced it.
Yeah, it really has to be a philosophy for every staff member in this district and every student in the district too. When you think about it, these aren't just skills that we use in the school. These are skills that we use throughout life, in our daily lives, after we graduate, at work, at home, in our relationships as well. And I think that has to be the real goal of any policy or resource allocation that we do here. Mr. Milton, looks like you wanted to say something. I'm sorry.
To read my mind, bro. My question is, and Patrice can chime in, but I know when we were very successful at Restorative Justice with Kit, she pretty much focused on it and had the time to do it, which was lovely. Recently at La Follette, we've had a small percentage of students, 2 to 3%, that have given us a lot of the work around behavior. My question is there a more intense circle process for those students that, just don't want to talk, just don't want to work it out? just don't want to be a part, because what happens is that small percentage being highly active and doing some perceived negative things, that throws off any other teacher that said, well, so-and-so and so-and-so went to the circle process and nothing came out of it. So that'll be my question. What can be done for those opportunity youth that are truly disengaged, high trauma involved, and just do not want to sit down and talk? Because we had, Devon, we had a situation where we had two groups of young ladies that it got to the point where the parents was coming up to fight at the school. And then I just found out the other day that one of the daughters worked at a local Walmart with the opposite parent. And while at Walmart, that parent still wanted to fight this kid. So that's my frustration piece. I mean, what can be done on that level? And it might not be something that we can answer today, but if we're going to be truly embedded in it, I would like to see it work for all students.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good question on, what really motivates a student to be engaged in a formal education setting, and if they aren't, is there anything we can do to change that?
Xavier, could I
go
just
ahead.
jump in quickly and piggyback off of John's point? I think we have to deal with the trauma that these kids are bringing into the school, because that is what leads to the behavioral issues. And so until we can really address those trauma issues that kids are bringing into the school and address their basic needs outside of school, it's going to be difficult for any real restorative justice to take place, because those kids aren't there yet. And so we got to get them there by identifying the needs that they have in terms of helping them to deal with the trauma that they're bringing into the school.
And that's actually restorative justice is addressing root causes. I mean, restorative justice is not only about a circle. Restorative justice is about addressing root causes. And it's not just about circling up, and even like a circle can be just a circle. It doesn't even have to be restorative justice. Restorative justice is about healing. So actually trying to understand what's at the root cause of the harm in different with the whole situation, and that with everybody who is involved, that's what would look like a restorative justice process. And not everybody's ready to be in circle, for example, at the same time together, maybe. It varies. So there is no cookie cutter process for restorative justice work. It's really relational. It's looking at what it's happening and how can we support and how can we collectively create, collectively commit to support and share responsibility in what the healing process is. Whether if it's a circle or not a circle, because a circle can be even weaponized, can be even used for somebody to feel that they're being there because they're being forced to be there, or they're being forced to speak, or forced to share, forced to be vulnerable. That's not what restorative justice is about. Restorative justice is about healing. And that what we are really trying to do is not to go to the things that we know that don't work, which is like punishment, because punishment hurts. Isolation hurts. All those things hurt. So when we think about restorative justice more like as a philosophy and not just like a circle, then we will go into what's going on. And so and this would be intensive support. So you would need, multiple people to jumping in, relationships. But that's why it's so important to have people who are doing this work, because that way, they can bring different people from the school community to jump in and to support the whole healing process. But if somebody is doing multiple things at the same time, it's like a family and community engagement, and it's also a teacher, and it's also supporting other things. It just cannot be an this. People have to be really, that's what their work should be. And even in a high school, when we talk about a high school, when we think about now, for example, in a high school, there should be at least, I would think at least 3 people actually doing this work, the bare minimum, just to do that. And so I don't know if it made sense to that, but yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Those are great comments and things to think about. I think, it kind of put it into two different contexts. There's a short term where if there are groups of individuals who are posing, a harm to themselves or others, that we have to address that. But, in the long term, we can't rely on those punitive exclusionary measures, because ultimately, if we don't address the root causes, we're just moving the problems around. Whether it'll happen in the school or in the community, and then we leave open the risk of things escalating further and students doing something really detrimental to, their future. And so I think us having a long-term view of trying to identify root causes and connect them to the resources that they need to, because usually conflicts, there's a surface level reason, something petty, or, someone gave me a bad look, and then there's the underlying root causes that we really have to focus on. If we don't just, if we're committed to actually solving the problem and not just moving the problem around. And so let's go on to the next slide, please, Barb. Oops. All right, and so as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, in preparation, please think about what else you want to know that will help you provide informed budget and policy recommendations. So November 5th, after November 3rd, November 19th, and December 3rd, we'll be discussing more concrete budget and policy recommendations. We'll be sending out the relevant policies again. We'll send out the information about, Denver, Oakland, and Minneapolis. And then we will try to get your questions answered to get you what you need for these next 3 meetings or so. And again, please send any questions you have to Mark, myself, or Gloria, or Karen, or Devon, any of the staff on the team, and we'll definitely get it answered. So just to summarize what we heard and provide a quick minute of feedback, because we do want to get into what's going on in schools, but this is kind of a summary synopsis of what we heard. So we had the joint presentation that was very powerful on restorative justice and transformative justice. We gave definition to those things, and we thought about how we can put those concepts and philosophies into policy and actualize and realize them in budget and resource allocation. We developed a collective understanding that this is about a culture change and a deep mindset. This can't just be another piece of paper with check boxes that we check off to say, oh, we did it. This has to be a belief that everyone buys into. All members of this committee come from sincere intentions with passion and commitment and expertise. We need to fully invest in this work, financial, time, staff, and be collaborative with community partners. So YWCA, Time Bank, city, everybody. And then we have to be more proactive and holistic with prevention work, because, as we explore concepts and underlying things of policing, it can be reactive. And so how do we address root causes, be proactive, and be holistic for students? Is there anything that people want to add about, what we heard, or if we missed anything? All right, we can move on.
I think
Oh, sorry.
I think one of the things that we also talked about last week was the importance of youth just not having voice, but having power, decision-making power over their schools and school community. And I think, that's really important, because when it's a bunch of adults deciding what's best for young people without not just them being at the table, but without them having decision-making power about what's best for them, it a lot of times inevitably becomes adultist, right? Even in my own work, I see that happening a lot with, youth organizers. So I think it's really important that we give youth voice and give youth power.
Thank you. We can certainly add that. And I think that tied into a question Martha had on what are levers of accountability for, police officers who may be involved and, and staff members, what's the standard we want to hold ourselves to and how do we hold ourselves accountable to that standard? All right, next slide, please. So there is a question and answer document with responses to the question from the last meeting that was sent prior. If anyone needs that again, we can send it out. Mark, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I just want to make sure Martha got her answer to her question.
Martha, how we feeling? Good?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are those question and answers being emailed to, how are we seeing that document? I haven't seen it in my email.
So Lori, can I respond to that, Savian?
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Thank you. So when I send out emails to you, I give you links to the meetings and board docs so that you can go to this meeting. All the documents are in there and you just click on them. We also have been emailing them lately as well. So you get them both ways. And if you're trying to find them in board docs, you just let me know. I'll take you there and you can just call or email me and I'll direct you there.
Great, thank you.
I believe they're in a Google document and then they're also in the form of a document on board docs, I believe. But yeah, feel free to email us and we can get you connected to that. All right, next slide. So I think this is where Devon comes in from La Follette High School, talking about school staff and student voices. What do restorative practices currently look like in your school? What's the current state? And then what are your hopes for how restorative practices and philosophies could grow in your school? So the desired state. And how and when do students experience restorative practices in your school?
Perfect. You got to click the next slide because it's beautiful. You got to see this. Yeah, this is good. All right. So just a couple of things before we get started. And, this is a newly formed group and I'm just meeting new people and I appreciate everyone for being here. As we talk about our schools, and this is just my belief and I believe everybody here is with me on this one, all the other school reps, we're going to be vulnerable with you. And we ask just a couple things that that we don't have this figured out, but we're actively learning and reading and searching and seeking and trying to find what is the right move. How do we support our students? How do we support our staff? How do we help our most vulnerable students? And so as we go through this, all I would ask is that you stay curious, know that we're being vulnerable and sharing where we currently are. And this isn't performance, but rather just reality. And so that's all I would ask as we move forward in this. And I know that everybody will do that, but I just want to throw it out there. John, you'll jump in and out with me and feel free to jump in and out as I share about LHS. And so I'll transition from representing all the high schools to just talking specifically about LHS. And then we'll go around, each rep will share their school's question 1 and question 2. And so even before I begin, I just want to call out that Time Bank has been a huge helper in getting us grounded in our beliefs in restorative, right? And so I stay all the way away from the word buy-in, right? Because you can talk me into something, you can talk me out of something. But if it's at my core belief, you can't really talk me out of that, right? Because that's the fabric of who I am, right? And so Time Bank has been very instrumental in supporting us. And I just want to say thank you to Time Bank, and I'll reference how they're supporting us moving forward. Here comes the vulnerability. Here we go. So our current state at La Follette for question 1, we do have 2 circle keepers, and Alexis Gardner, Molly Hayes. They're 2 great people, and they do circles for us. In terms of how do students question 2, students access those circles, it's largely been reactive. It's largely been something happens, we respond, and then we ask students, are you ready for a circle? We know sometimes circles go well and sometimes they don't go so well. And so that's been the current process, right, with circles. And this is no slam on anybody that's doing them. It's our current work, but we know that restorative, as I've heard many people say, and I believe that restorative is more than just a circle, right? It's a mind set change. It takes the appropriate conditions for restorative to truly become at our core belief and to move forward. And so it takes training, it takes common language, it takes grounding, it takes all of these things. And the other piece is it takes follow-up. If ever you thought a circle was a one thing and that's it, you were 100% wrong. My big brother and I mean, we circle up all the time, right? I mean, he's 4 years older than me. We have to do circles every Thanksgiving because somebody says something, right? And so I think that's really important to understand that this isn't you do it once and life is better. It could be, and we hope that that's the case, but that's not always the case. And then also, you have to know that someone is ready for a circle. People will very quickly, not speaking in Madison, but I've done this before with the restorative, someone will say, well, the circle didn't work. Who ran it? Somebody trained or not trained? What was some of the language that was used? So on and so forth. And when you start digging in a little bit by little bit, you realize where things became not so good, right? It became unraveled. And so I think that's important. That's our current state and how our students access restorative currently. And again, both Molly and Alexis are working super hard to develop that with Time Bank. But we have a whole plan. Time Bank helped us develop this abolitionist restorative justice outline about how we're going to move forward in our work. And I would love to share it with you all. And wait, Lori, I got to ask, is it shareable at this point? So we got to talk about when I can share it with everybody. Perfect. So I can share it with you. But it truly was a collaboration of how we're going to move forward. And the first step was just sharing with our staff our big rocks for the year. That one of them was anti-racist commitments that we're going to be making. And the other one is our abolitionist restorative justice work together. And like we announced that day one. And I don't think I even asked Time Bank's permission to do it. I just said, here's what we will be doing this year. And it was well received, right? And so now the next steps are, what do we do? And so we want to offer additional training. We had 16 people trained this summer, which is big, from a couple to 16 trained in restorative. And for us, that's like a really big move. The training is several days, and they've been working, Time Bank's working with us to set that up. But we have 4 more planned, which I think is really important. I think we're also trying to expand our leadership through that training so that it's not just administrators who have this, but rather teachers and many people in the building. Outreach, we call security outreach, our deans, teachers, everyone is trained in the art of restorative. And that just is an adaptive piece, right? I think the other part that I'm super excited about is creating a system where students and staff can initiate restorative requests, right? And I think that's really important. I worked at a middle school in Beloit where we created a system for, we called it restorative to order, and it, like, people kind of thought it was funny and cute, but really it gave a 6th grader a chance to say, I'll pick on you, John. John and I had a problem at lunch today. We probably got to unpack this. I had a social worker, a psych, 2 counselors, an assistant principal. It came right to our emails, like in a hopper, and we would grab those, and then we would write about what we did with the students, and then follow back up, right? So picture like 1,700 students being able to say, I need to process this with, I'm picking on Mark. We need to talk about what happened in that situation. That's like a big dream. And then also, Savion, I'm gonna take a page from your book, but Dr. Brown and I talked about this earlier about how do we create a leadership opportunity? How do we have students be circle keepers? In the future, we train them, but then also how do we then give them credit? How are we building a class around restorative? Because the restorative is truly a way of life. And I think, that's really, really important. I want to go back just to current state. La Follette had been like the mecca of restorative, as I understand it, from just conversation with Dr. Wynn, right? And then somehow we moved away from the belief for whatever reason. I don't know why, but this is where we reground and make it, we reground ourselves in the belief of restorative. And that's where we want to get back to. This year was, we learned a lot. I mean, about working with vulnerable students. And were there some misses? Absolutely. I wish I could go back and redo and get at the root of many, many things, right? But we can't do that. We have to move forward. And so I just, in being vulnerable, I appreciate John bringing that up about the two groups of kids that we couldn't, that we were struggling with. And I truly appreciate that. But I think it even goes deeper about this. What were the conditions, right? Was everybody trained and ready? Were we using a common language? And how are we supporting students? And so I think that's where I'll pause and I will let the next school jump in. Who's going after me?
I can go. So I'm Patrice Hutchins from East. I'm gonna kind of share just what our current state is and then just some pieces for the desired state. And I will be fully transparent that a lot of the desired state part is just from my experience and my experience in multiple high schools and just where I think we should go. So we are actively working as a staff to create a school environment where students feel safe and have a sense of belonging, because we know that through those positive relationships and that engagement that students are having academic success, that they are going to be in classrooms, that we know that behaviors are going to go down and people are going to feel and be successful. So that work is articulated through our equity vision, which is embedded in all of our professional development, and as well as when we give feedback to staff, which comes in the form of student learning partnerships and also from colleagues and administrators. We do at least monthly, if not more, staff equity circles. In those circles, we are able to dialogue with our colleagues about different topics around race and equity. Like tomorrow during our professional development, we have our United Asians group that will be speaking, and then we will be like taking in what they said and learning from it and bringing action from that. Students are able to request circles if they would like them, and staff are as well. That is done usually through, and those are usually come from student conflict or staff conflict. That's led by myself and then other people on our BRT, which is our behavior response team. We try to utilize those as much as we can, in addition to alternatives to suspension when possible. We have a team that has been actively working this summer to build a more robust system for alternatives to suspension so that we can really utilize those more for our top most common behaviors, like being in the hallway without permission, swearing at staff, and disruption, so that we're not suspending for those behaviors, but instead getting to the root of the cause. We also started a Restorative Justice Club at East that students are a part of, and that is something that, while virtual, is actually a really awesome time that students are getting to learn the foundations of restorative justice. A lot of them already know it from middle school, and we're going to actively work on putting together circle scripts and preparing for when we are back in the building so that we can have a plan ready to go for those students to be leaders in this work. And then just kind of going into the desired state, like we'd really love to see our staff buy into continuing to bring our equity vision to life, having our school community a place where students feel safe, and then also building the restorative justice work that we're already doing. So how are we getting staff trained? Right before school closed in the spring, we had a plan to get around 20 staff trained, which we are hoping to continue that work and have going again. So we're really excited about that. And then really, how are we engaging staff and students in that work together? Some things that I just want to put out there too, and that I see as my desired state as an employee in MMSD, is how are we bringing positions that are only dedicated to restorative justice in our high schools? Every position right now is with something else. And a lot of times what that is with behavior. And so you have to remember that if you're the behavior responder and then you have to pull them in to do a circle, or you're the one that's suspending, that is really conflicting of what someone can share or feel safe with when they're talking to someone in restorative work. My ideal position would be I'm just saying, like, if I was in that position, I'm working with staff on how to build community in your classroom, how to support students, how to make them feel safe and belong. And then how am I being there for on-demand circles when a staff needs it, when a student needs it? How am I doing training so that staff can be trained to really understand what a restorative conversation is? Because it's not just about how the student has to say what the teacher wants to hear and how they're changing their behavior, but really giving them an opportunity to say, hey, something that you did harmed me, and having staff be in a place to accept that feedback and then to change what's going on and really be able to do proactive work. Because one of the biggest problems is that when you have 14 different things on your plate, the first thing to go is that good proactive restorative work that we know how to do. And so that's something that I would really love to see happen. I would also love to see there to be time and like a commitment for teaching staff to be a part of restorative justice. Like, I'm wondering how do we change that culture and that mindset? And how do we make it so that it's not just a mandate or something that you have to do, but something that our district is living by? I'm wondering where is the voice in our union to say that this is something that if you are a teacher in MMSD, you are committing to, you are a part of, that you believe in. I would love to see how we can have, just when a staff member comes and joins this district, how are they actively being a part of a training right away off the bat? That gives the biggest message that this is something that we are committing to, right? Like the second, before you even walk into a building, you know that restorative justice is something that you need to know. This is an MMSD way. And if that's something, we need to be really specific about that. The other thing is I think we need to take time to like allow our teachers and in our classrooms to build community and to feel okay doing that, and to not feel like they need to be rushed through curriculum just so that they can get through something. They need to take time and know their students, learn their names, build community so that they feel safe. Because one of the biggest things that happen, and I know every single person who's done a circle at a high school knows this, when a classroom's a mess and somebody's like, I need you to come do a circle in my classroom. And I'm like, okay, so I come in there. What am I restoring to? If you haven't built community, then there's nothing to restore back to. You really have to have that built from the get-go in order for this to work. And so I think that is something that we really need to tell our teachers is okay, and we need to take time to do that. Sorry, that was a lot. I apologize. But the other piece is like, in terms of, for question 2, how are students experiencing restorative justice? It's kind of similar to what Devon said. It's really about when there's a conflict. It's all, for the most part, reactive. And I would love to see it be more proactive. I'm really hoping that while we continue through our restorative justice club and build leadership capacity there, that students, that can be on the forefront. And I want students in the classroom leading circles and leading trainings and being the one whose voice is up there, because we know that student voice is far more powerful than anything that us as adults can say. And they're going to be the ones that are the change makers. So that's East.
Thank you. Please don't apologize.
I'm gonna call you Pastor Patrice from now on.
Can I read Shabaz's response real quick, if that's okay, Savion?
Please do.
All right, from Shabazz, we rolled out our Shabazz conflict process last year and did some teaching with advisories. At this time, students request or are prompted by a staff member to have conversations. No real aligned practice unless advocated by students or students. So that's from Shabazz.
I guess I'll go for West now. So I'm Corvon Gaines, the coordinator of student engagement at West. And with our current state, as of right now with the virtual, we do receive referrals in a virtual world. And when we respond to that, we're usually focused on the social emotional understanding of the circumstance. And we know that the social emotional toll of both the pandemic and the economy, and with all the racial tension going on here in Madison, has been, had a crazy impact on staff, students, and families. So our approach is basically has been focusing on relationships with students and just processing the situation at hand. So doing our best that we can to try to form those relationships through a screen is all we've been focusing on virtually. During this time as well, our focus on our anti-racism teaching and learning, we do that weekly and monthly with our staff and our students. And that teaching aligns perfectly with restorative justice in our interactions with students, is giving them space to understand what harm has been caused and how we can repair that harm. And so that's what we've been trying to do virtually. And then if we were in the building, our students, they deal with an alternative to suspension. Like Ms. Hutchins said, if there's anything going on with the teacher or something like that with language or fighting or anything like that, they have a chance, an opportunity to repair that harm instead of going into out of school suspension or ISS, which I think is great to give that students that opportunity. We do offer circles all the time, different type of circles, welcome back circles, re-engagement circles, and just relationship type of circles, giving those students the opportunity to experience those type of things. And also we rolled out this, I think it was a couple years ago, we gave every staff member in our building just a restorative conversation card. So whenever they're in the hallways, having a conversation with a student, just being reflective and restorative, having that mindset, like what happened, who caused what, how can we repair this? And I think that's a good way where teachers can build those relationships and not always have to call the BAT team for support. You figure out ways to deal with that student using your restorative mindset and not always have to rely on somebody else who already has that established. You step up and form that relationship yourself. And our desired state at West is we will have additional funding and space to provide full staff training in restorative justice. Right now we have 2 leads, and they are being pulled in several different directions, and they just cannot do the work the way that it's supposed to be done correctly. It just doesn't work. So if we can just get someone maybe who actually knows the ins and out of high school, who knows what goes on in the building, and their sole purpose is restorative justice, and they're doing it the way it's intended, that'll go a long way for us. Just like Patrice said, just someone whose sole purpose is to come in here and do restorative justice will make our lives a lot easier since we're all doing so much other stuff. Also, we would like to have an opportunity to provide trainings for our families so they can explore this mindset shift as well, so that they understand the culture here and that the way that we're starting to build this community. And I think that needs to come from the district as well. If this is the lane that we're moving in, it needs to come from the district to let them know and the families know where we're moving. We also want to continue to grow our Restorative Justice Club and get more students trained as circle keepers to continue to empower them as leaders within the school and the school community. And we want to continue to embed our Restorative Justice Club within our student voice platform, because we already have a space where we gather feedback from our students. So that will allow us a different way to continue to bring restorative justice into our classrooms on an individual basis. Yeah, that's about it. And the way the experience is just like every other school. It's always after the fact. We're always too late. The things already happened. They're already there. How can we continue to love our students and get them to love one another as well? And I guess it starts with us and it starts with the community. It starts with everyone here. So yeah, just being more proactive. But we do offer all those opportunity circles and all that. They can request them. But every student has to want to do it before we can do it. That's all.
Yeah, I think, with the knowledge that students can request circles as they come up, I think that goes back to Martha's point about, forming that relationship early at the beginning of the school year and how important that can be.
I can jump in here and speak on Memorial's piece real quick. Marcus Flowers, Dean of Students at Memorial High School. Currently, kind of what do we do around restorative practices at our school, restorative justice at our school? What it looks like, we try to incorporate circle process into a lot of things that we do. And a lot of that is reactive and in response when situations have happened. But in our circle, we use different kind of circles. We have restorative conversations. We have mediation focused circles. We also have circles for learning. We try to get our teachers to use circle process and learning, and some of our classrooms some of our teachers have incorporated that into their classroom structures. We have students, families, staff, all being a part of our circles, the different types of circles that we have. Our restorative justice work is led by our mobile response team, which includes our deans, our social workers, our psychologists, our APs, and then our outreach and engagement staff, also known as our SSAs, who do great work with our students alongside all the other staff members. We also have staff-focused community circles. During our community days, we have staff participate in circle processes around race and equity. We try to have that be a space where we hold it for our staff to have conversations that dig deeper. It's interdepartmental, so we have people from different departments and different roles within our schools mixed together in different circles to really have some tougher conversations around race and equity, what that looks like at our school, how we can change our school and transform our school. We also have affinity circle spaces that we offer on PD days. So those kind of alternate depending upon need and what the agenda for the PD day is. And that is kind of how we see our restorative justice practices kind of manifesting at Memorial. That's our current state. Our desired state, I think first we want to build our capacity, first and foremost among staff to be able to understand restorative justice in a larger framework, and then move to a space where we're thinking about transformative justice. Because when we talk about restorative justice, we're talking about kind of putting people back in their station, but thinking about transformative justice as a way of helping someone transcend the current station that they exist in. And that's a desired state for us to move towards. We are a long ways away from that, where we are still trying to get everybody on page with RJ. And again, a lot of that is culture. And so time and space to invest in that culture, whether it is staff-based, whether we are creating positions where the staff is dedicated solely to locking in and being able to support teachers in building classroom culture, classroom community, that is something that kids want to come back into and want to feel connected to, so that when something does go awry, they want to restore or want to re-engage in that environment in a positive way, and address any harm that may have been caused, and want to repair that harm. So I think that's a really important when we think about our desired state. And then we also want to provide our students with a space to grow, become leaders, and have it become something that is more centered on students. Right now it's adult driven, and we know that that's not one, it's not sustainable, and it's not how RJ thrives. It's not an environment in which RJ will thrive. So we have to figure out a way of making sure that our students are at the center, both with voice, but also really understanding and investing in the culture as much as we are. The other thing is we got to strengthen our relationships with outside agencies who are supporting RJ in our community. It's something that we've talked about in our leadership team this year, is making sure that if we're going to focus on developing a culture around RJ, we need to be talking to people in the community who are doing this already, building bridges, allowing them to hold us accountable, creating a pathway of communication, so that we're bouncing ideas off of them, they're bouncing ideas off of us. We're all serving the same people, and so our goal is to connect with people who are already doing the work that we want to do, and grow with them, right? And allow them to let us grow and to guide us as we kind of start to stretch our legs into new territory. And this is a new way of thinking in schools. So those are kind of the desired state for us. How and when do students and staff experience restorative practices? One way for us, and shout out to our outreach and engagement folks, because they do a great job of giving us a proactive element to our restorative practices. Oftentimes, our staff who are on the floor, in the halls, they know our students so well, and they have such great connections with our students. They can kind of come find me or come find our other dean, Drew Slamkis, or an AP or a social worker and say, so-and-so came in today and they're looking a little like they're not feeling it right now. And we can check in with that student, or they can bring that student to us and we can check in with them. Sometimes students come directly to them. So that is our informal, and we have to formalize that, but that is our informal proactive approach right now. Is sometimes our outreach and engagement folks can connect with students prior to an incident popping off, get some information. The students have a level of trust and a level of connection. They can bring that student to another trusted adult, and then we can start to break down that issue before it becomes something that impacts that student's learning for the day, or requires that student to, get into a fight, get suspended, and go down that path. Outside of that, though, we don't have, most of our kids have to, get into something in order to access our RJ practices. And that's an area where we have to improve, and we have to get better, and we have to do better for our students. And also, when we talk about desired state, the ability for students to address issues with staff. Really, it's a one-way conversation right now, or a one-way kind of connection right now, where staff will engage and ask for a restorative circle. I will say, oftentimes our staff are asking for restorative conversations. And we do have a group and a critical mass of staff who get RJ and who understand it, and who don't want kids to be removed from their learning spaces for prolonged periods of time. And so they are sometimes initiating opportunities to engage with a student in a non-punitive way, to just talk about their relationship and work through their relationship with the student. We don't have a mechanism for our young people to do that, and that has to change. And that's something that, when we think about desired state, we want to be different. So that's kind of the current state of restorative justice practices, restorative justice at Memorial.
Excuse me, Savion, I want to restate capital, and then I also have, I got capital and Shabazz, the full process. Let me restate that real quick. So for the current state for Shabazz, each semester we offer a circle keeping course, which includes the idea teaching of restorative practices. Occasionally, circle keepers have been asked to handle disputes between students when harm has been done. We have 2 to 3 staff members that handle restorative conversations between students at all times, staff, but our practices and protocols vary widely. Desired state, possibly have a significant space designed to train a core group of staff and demonstrate and advocate. This is how we handle conflict at Shabazz. We rolled out, like I said before, we rolled out Shabazz conflict process last year and did some teaching with adversaries. At this time, students request or are prompted by a staff member to have a conversation, no real aligned practice unless advocated by a student or students. For capital, the current state of restorative practice begins with the equity vision and the systems we have designed to fulfill that vision. To actualize this, capital has an adversary and coaching model that prioritizes relational trust and includes productive struggle. In this way, students and staff are regularly in the space of problem identification and problem solving. We center learning partnerships that invite opportunities to reflect on all experience, interests, including frustration, confusion, joy, curiosity, and play. Desired state, we will continue to learn into core and foundational restorative practices that center humanity so that we can rely on those practices to guide us if and when situations arise that need complex problem solving and or conflict resolution. And just to piggyback on the other 3 presenters, I think it's key that in order to do this restorative practice correct, it has to be embedded with the teachers. And when I say embedded with the teachers, it starts there. I love our teachers, and in the words of Michael Jackson, I'm saying this with love, but we have a presenter, Bettina Love, and we have teachers going back trying to be Bettina Love. the teachers got to own it and have their own style and have their own angle on it in order to really be embedded and really help our students out.
All right, thank you. I think the next slide, trying to encourage group reflections, affirmations, or questions from what we just heard. Something new that I learned was, the ability of students to request circles if, they identify an argument or an issue they have with another student or another staff member. I'm curious how many students know they have that available instead of going the next step in escalation of a disagreement or conflict. I'm not sure if you're talking, Anthony, but you're on mute.
No, someone was talking to me. My apologies.
I'm sorry. So yeah, one question I have is awareness for students. I think we have an opportunity with obviously the transition from 8th to freshman, that, this is a message that they have this option, that students, young people have this option, immediately when they enter high school and even at middle school. I think it's important that we ingrain this work and these philosophies at the middle school and elementary school level as well, because people of all ages will experience conflict of some sort, and humans as a whole have to do a better job of working through conflict they have with one another instead of these, hammer type punitive solutions. But with that, I want to open it up to the group on, are there any reflections, affirmations, or questions people have on what they've heard?
I just want to say that, being a former YWCA employee, I did circles in middle school, and they weren't in response to anything. It was like a restorative justice club, and just the growth I saw in students. We had students that matured greatly from 6th to 8th grade. And then just to say another thing about how other districts are kind of embracing this, I remember teaching a restorative justice class at MG21, which is Winona's, alternative school. And so I did it, I think it was about 8 to 10 weeks, and those kids got credit for that class. And they chose that class. They wanted to know about restorative justice, and they wanted to make it a part of who they are. And so the fact that that's something that we're behind in, and we're not, necessarily recognizing the importance, even from middle school, seeing the impact that it had on those kids that I, helped lead their restorative justice club in middle school, the impact that it had on the high schoolers that I work with at MG21. I don't understand why MMSD, right, has not seen the importance of that role within our high schools, because it, Flowers gave us the props, as the outreach and engagement people for being connected to the students. But once again, we're pulled in several different ways as well. And so to have somebody there that actually, that's their focus, I think, it does, it makes a heavy load a little lighter. So it just amazes me that we haven't really dived head first into what that really means for our students. Because when we talked earlier, it's not just about circles, it's about how we respond to kids, right? And teachers are the first responders. And depending on what your response is to that kid who's experiencing a trauma or who's having a moment, that determines everything, right? The domino effect, everything that happens after that initial response, right? Those things are important. Those things are key. And so if we are saying it's important as a part of our culture, we have to get, I don't want to use the word buy-in, because I learned, right, if you can get me to buy in, you can get me to buy out, but it has to be a part of who we are, to our core. And I think that's the difference. The places that do it well, I think those people believe it to their core, that as a society, this is what helps us to be better people, not just more docile students, but this is what helps us to be better people.
Thank you. That's really important. I'm just going to go around the horn and ask y'all individually. Feel free to say pass or skip, but just on the order of my screen, just to make sure we get everyone's voice heard. Marcus, is there anything you'd like to share?
No, I've talked. I'm good.
You have talked, Patrice.
Yes, I've taken up space.
Okay, I'm sorry. Patrice, you have talked, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think the only thing I would add is that, just echoing what the other people from schools have shared, like, I think we heard similar themes from all the schools, and that there are really dedicated people that want to do this work and really care about this work and want it ingrained in our schools. So just, I feel like that is one big thing that we heard from all of our school people.
Thank you. Wayne, is there anything you'd like to reflect on or affirm or have questions on?
Oh, just to sort of reemphasize again that the importance of addressing our kids' root causes of what issues they're bringing into the school, whether it's food insecurity or some sort of trauma they're dealing with. And so when they're in the schools and they're having some challenges, how does the school address that? And so making sure that, as we talked about with restorative justice, making sure that the culture is such that our kids feel comfortable in that space, right? Because I think it was mentioned by someone earlier. I mean, if you've got a kid who's been disciplined by this same person and now they're leading a restorative justice circle, that's really a conflict of interest. And so we got to make sure that our kids feel comfortable in those spaces, and more importantly, addressing the psychological needs that they're bringing into the school in terms of dealing with the trauma that they're facing oftentimes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, is there anything you'd like to reflect, affirm, or have questions on?
Well, I'm just doing a lot of listening and learning, and this has been a very inspirational group to be a part of. And I just wanted to thank everybody for making me a better person, straight up. Yesterday we had the district had an all staff meeting, and it was really voluntary, but the attendance was quite impressive. And the culture within the adults across the district is making, I'm going to say, some very positive steps under the new superintendent's leadership. When he we're all encouraging everybody to be more empowered to speak freely and address conflicts in a more positive fashion. And yesterday he brought up with the adults, all of the staff, that people should feel comfortable and be respected, and just reiterating, even bullying won't be tolerated under his administration, so that staff can start to really think about how they are feeling and experiencing different things. So I think we're at a good point. The district right now is in great shape by way of its leadership at the top level. And on behalf of Madison teachers, we're doing a lot of the same examinations. So teachers, educational support professionals, thousands of people have been coming together just to examine our own structures, our own culture, our own biases. And last couple nights ago, we changed some structural issues. I know this is off task a little bit, but it's parallel. Creating a representative in every school for equity and diversity, like a shop steward, to help staff work through these issues in a more constructive fashion amongst themselves. And again, very, very much in tune with, I think it was Anthony's and Savia, and thanks for bringing it up. How can kids activate and initiate, situations with the adults if they're having them, or whatever they're dealing with, accessing, the restorative justice process. So I just want to thank everybody for having me on the group, and I'm sure learning a heck of a lot. So thanks.
Thank you so much. I think that's a important point that, there's 7 or 8 billion people on this earth, and sometimes conflict or disagreement will be a fact of life, and the key is how we respond to that. Do we address it in productive and healthy ways, or do we further escalate and respond in ways that we have seen with data do not get us to where we want to go? So with punitive punishment or with bullying. I'm going to go to Coach Assad. Is there anything you'd like to reflect, affirm, or have questions on what we've heard today? Coach, are you there? Well, we will return to Coach. Oh, there we go.
Sir?
Oh, please go ahead.
First of all, hello, everybody. I apologize for getting here late. I was dealing with some children, but I just have a couple observations I want to make. I find it, can someone help me with this question? I wonder, a lot of us have talked about how long that they've been doing, implementing and employing and utilizing restorative justice practices. People talking about elementary and middle school. Have we been doing them correctly if we're still talking about doing them? And a lot of the evidence shows that what we may think is restorative justice practices and teaching isn't working. I want to know from right now our professionals in this, which would be the women from Freedom Inc. and Time Bank. Do you feel like we should be doing restorative justice practices in a different way than we do them now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I thought, because so many people.
Yeah, for sure.
We run to the new. We always want to jump on the bandwagon and act as if we're doing something when we engage in these labels. But let's be frank about it. We haven't done this the right way. We have blown this. We've been talking about. I remember Bill Baldwin, a really lovely man. We were doing this at the Meadowwood Neighborhood Center, and he was quite good at it. But I've watched a lot of people do this and forget it gets firmly stagnated and mired in white supremacist practices and the white structure's inability to even acknowledge the fact that that they have work to do. And since most of our school system is led by a white supremacist structure, let's not fool ourselves into thinking that these practices are really going to be implemented with honesty, when in many cases, not only do we not have to understand them, we acknowledge that because of our standing in society, we don't have to even care if they really work. And the union gentlemen, I want to just say this to you. I find it amazing when colonizers talk about fairness. Let's diversify our union before we start talking about how we address and how people scream and yell and talk about what they really want, because we have to work on some in-core issues in our school that we really have to address in an honest way before we can start patting ourselves on the back as if we've come so far. And I'm going to always be the one that says this. I don't think I'm the only one, but I'm not going to let us get so satisfied with fake progress and think we don't have to do anything else, because ultimately, unless we start doing this restorative justice in the correct way, we, once again, 32 years of a 52% dropout rate of brown and black children. Let's quit pretending we're doing something. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. And I also want to thank, Marcus, Patrice, Anthony, and Corvan, and Ed, and John Milton for giving an honest assessment of where we're at with our schools and providing, some thoughts on how we can get to our desired state. We do operate in a country that has been, drowning in white supremacy since its founding. And we have to be more proactive and intentional about acknowledging that, deconstructing that, and building something new. I think that's kind of at the core of why we're here, in terms of divesting from the policing institution that we think is not, necessarily compatible with the learning environments we want for our Black children, and trying to build a new model of public safety and what accountability and justice looks like. Chief Tubbs, is there anything you'd like to reflect or affirm or question based on what we heard from our high schools?
Right now, I'm just learning and listening right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria, I know you're there with us. Thank you for being here. Feel free to text me if you want anything to add.
Sounds good, Sabian. I'm good. I'm feeling really sick tonight, so sorry I'm not on camera, but great conversation tonight. Thank you for all your work and your input.
Thank you for being here with us through your sickness, and definitely praying for you. Martha, anything you'd like to reflect, affirm, or question?
I like how the elementary schools have been brought up a couple of times, because I think learned behavior can be reflected upon. Like, what are we learning going into high school in the first place, and what good practices are coming in? Because inclusion in the classroom starts at a very young age anyways. And like I'm part of some DPI committees, and last year they started doing SEL, social emotional learning. Can there be something that can be at a bigger level where there's more implementation of restorative justice being discussed in that kind of environment? Because now that school's at home, and I've been able to see my daughter take part in this, it's a lot of communication between your peers and respect for each other and how to have productive conversations. So I like to know if there'd be more chance of doing things at a earlier age prior to, so we're coming in with some tools that our students have for themselves, and possibly a bigger conversation too. Just so we're blanketing more of, we're not just keeping our own little bubble of the conversation, we're including more and more people.
That's a great point, because I mean, this is a life skill, working through disagreement and conflict in productive, healthy ways. That, we do have to teach at the early level. So how can we incorporate that into our learning programs is an important question and point to raise. All right, I'm going to go down the line here. Stephanie, Anthony, and then Bianca.
So I don't have anything to say. I think just as a parent, I'm just here, just taking it all in. So then I understand what is going on, and then I'm able to share it with parents, let them know like we're trying to make some changes. So I don't have anything.
Thank you. Anthony, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I went already. Thank you.
Thank you. Bianca?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear people really uplift the point around students having power and voice. Also about restorative justice starting at the elementary age level. I also think that it's really important that we know restorative justice is not like a fix all of our problems resource or tool. Even in our most free, desired world after white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy and all those things end, there's still going to be conflict. There's still going to, like, young people are still going to be young people, right? And then messing up or causing harm or even doing the most, whatever biggest thing that we can imagine in our mind doesn't make them any less deserving of freedom and liberation and healthy accountability. And I think that's what restorative justice, that's an important piece of the puzzle, that it's not gonna solve everything. It can put healthy preventative measures and humanizing measures in place, and can help deal with harm after or during, but it's not going to make young people not fight and comment nasty things under like Instagram posts, right? But it can be a tool for that. So I really, want to just reiterate the point that kids are still gonna be kids, and they still are deserving of dignity and liberation.
Thank you. That's a good point. And kids and adults deserve the space to make mistakes, but have just accountability and not receive, punishment or penalties that, will affect them for the rest of their lives and inhibit them from learning necessary lessons from their mistakes. So again, exclusionary punitive measures in reaction to student behavior, what does that actually achieve? Are we learning anything? Are we addressing anything? Or are we just going off of gut reactions to what someone deserves? Which certainly carries a level of bias too on what we think kids or adults deserve as well. All right, Corvan and Lori, are there any? Corvan, you talked a bit, but y'all, Corvan and Lori, any reflections, affirmations, or questions based off what we've heard?
No, but I'm gonna be honest. I love restorative justice and everything, but I'm thinking about one particular student who I have a great relationship with. He was a minor, he was always getting in trouble, always stealing cars, and then nothing would happen. I don't know what restorative work was going on, but nothing would happen. He'll get right out. Then the second he turned 17, he was done. It's over. So he got all these chances as a minor, 16, and then right when he turned 17, he's like in that system now because he never figured anything out. He never learned his lesson or anything, and now he's stuck in that system now. After he gotten away with so many chances, now boom, we hit him with the okie doke, let him out. Then right when he turned 17, we got him, and I don't think that's right either. No, it's a different subject, but.
I think that's an important point to raise.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Savian, I'll just step in here. I think, what Corvan just said is so true. We continue to lose our children to the criminal justice system. And, I think it's going to take a holistic response. But the reality is that we are losing our kids. And I feel the frustration that Corvan is expressing right now, because by the time they turn 17, we have lost them, and there have been systems that have been in place of failures all the way around in serving our children, from the education system, from our community partners, across the board. We fail our children. And it is very frustrating to see when you get to the point when you become an adult, we have lost them. And so I think that restorative justice, I agree, is not the be all end all. It is progress. And we have to think of many different approaches to intervening and supporting our youth in a very holistic way. And those systems are just not in place right now. So thank you for Corvan for bringing that into the space. I think that is the reality, and we need to have further discussions around what that looks like. And I think it was Marcus who said, it is, or Anthony, about our opportunity youth, and the vulnerabilities that they have. And so how do we support them within our schools? And so I know that many cities and districts are dealing with this issue across the country. And I don't want to wait any further and lose any more children to the criminal justice system. And so, that's all I would add. Thank you, Sabian.
Yeah, of course. Eugenia, is there anything you'd like to add? And please correct me if I'm saying your name wrong.
Thank you, Sabian. It's Eugenia, and it's okay. I'm okay in people asking me if how to pronounce my name, and if it's like that I like more than the other. So I appreciate you asking. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think that what I would like just to add is like that we heard from the high schools, and I appreciate that a lot, but also like bringing back like what Anne was sharing about the middle school and the elementary. Like when you look at the districts in other countries that have implemented restorative justice, they have done it overall, like the whole district approach, not only the high schools. They have like it's implemented in all their middle schools. It's implemented, and so that has to be, in order for this to work, it has to be implemented holistically in the whole district. And also giving families the opportunity to learn about what it is and how to bring this knowledge and these healing practices into their homes, into the relationships with their children and everything. That is also very important. That has to be integrated. And also the elimination of exclusionary punitive policies and practices and roles and manuals, because I just want to affirm also what Patrice was sharing about how difficult it is if you are a behavior respond to also be doing restorative justice. And like we see that also like deans doing, like people who are in charge of removing even youth from their classrooms, how painful it is and how difficult it is. So it has to be happening at the same time. If you like, it's like you cannot have a police officer doing healing work, doing restorative justice work. And that has to be clear, because that is not aligned with the philosophy. And with that, I would like to also invite from the top, and I'm asking about the board. I think the board needs to get training in restorative justice and what restorative justice is. It has to also start at the top, because when we look at other places where restorative justice has been implemented, there has been board commitments, there has been resolutions passed by the board, there has been, and that is something that has not happened. I mean, we have right now in our board Ananda, who was director of our department in the past. That's amazing, right? So I would love to hear her voice, for example, in this committee. I would love to hear voices of people who have experience in actually implementing restorative justice practice, that the board has it. So that's a question that I have. Why, for example, we don't have Ananda's voice here? Why we don't have the MMSD, like the two leads, like Lana and Rochelle, also in this space? I think that it has to be all around. So yeah, I just wanted to add that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I will gladly take another, not training, but, to your point, I mean, Ananda did train me in restorative justice when I was a senior at La Follette. So I am familiar.
Yeah, and I was not talking about you, Savion or Ananda, but I think that it's important that when the board says like, we're going to go through it, we're going to go through, get together, and because you all learn from each other too.
I think that's an important point. It does start, in terms of a culture of organization, leading by example. And I think that's something that in terms of our recommendations, I'd be in favor of that as a recommendation, just so everyone really understands what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, I believe I called on everyone but staff. So staff, is there anything you'd like to add from?
Hey, Savion, I think that Lori got missed, and so I just wanted to bring it back to acknowledge that she hasn't shared yet.
Thanks.
I'm so sorry, Lori.
Oh, it's no problem. Thanks, Patrice. My internet I got kicked out for a moment. Yeah, I appreciate what everyone has shared. What do I want to add? I think I agree with what AU is saying in terms of leaders within the district going through training so they understand more deeply what it means, so it becomes different than like words on paper, and it actually is something that people have a deeper understanding of. I think that would be beautiful. And just really wanting to emphasize a lot of what people from the schools were saying in terms of putting and the idea of it being an add-on, and the restorative justice work that's happening in some schools being on top of, you know, there's been people that we've worked with that are staff of MMSD that are trying to do restorative justice work, and they're also responsible for the blood drive and prom and this and that, and just like a gazillion things that are going on. And so yeah, I just want to lift up the need to dedicate more time to it. And then also just the idea that, like, how can we as a district just slow down? Because there's not, when conflict happens, it's not just one conversation and then the conflict is just boom, done. You know, we have to invest in building that. So I just want to share those things. And also just to kind of lift up what Coach was saying around you can't look at restorative justice work and design restorative justice work and talk about healing and talking about those kinds of things without looking at the ways white supremacist culture plays into that whole piece. And I'm curious about, for the schools that are having situations where students are able to bring adults to request a circle process within, maybe they're in their classroom and they experience a microaggression from their teacher, or like something is happening there where they feel like they need some repair. Are adults in those buildings participating in those processes? Are they coming into those processes? And I'm just curious about the agreements and the accountability all the way around in those spaces, because there are obviously huge power dynamics. So it's a huge deal for a student to request a circle process with an adult. So I'm just curious about those things as well. Thanks.
Can I add on to what Lori said? Because it was beautifully said. In addition to having the board go through RJ training, I would highly recommend the board members come and spend a day out at the high schools or at a middle school or at an elementary school and understand what outreach does, understand what I do, what Mr. Flowers do, and then understand how to implement RJ and to see the amount of work or the amount of shifting that we have to do on a daily basis to truly understand what is going on. Period.
Absolutely.
And
So,
I think when it comes to RJ too, I'm sorry, Savion, it has to be like students have to be able to consent to who they want to participate in the circle with them, and including adults, right? It's, of course, some kids are like, no, I'm not about to go to no restorative circle with the person that I got into it with. But when it comes to teachers, because of the power dynamics, they can't choose who they want to participate in the process with them. And it might not be a healing process. It's not going to be a healing process if you're forced to have a police officer or to have the teacher who did the harm to you participate in the process.
Yeah, one thing just around what Bianca is saying, there has to be consent through everything. There's no way to say like a process looks like this, because it always depends on the situation and what's going on. You can't just say like, all right, this person requested a circle, so boom, here we go, we're doing this thing. And you know, in some ways it's just a huge shift. Punitive culture is so quick. It's just like, this happened, boom, that's done. And restorative process is so slow, so much slower. And you have to, like Bianca is saying, like really understand where people are at before you try to bring people together. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't.
yeah, to that point, it's about improving a relationship, you know, as in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, it does have, you know, the instant gratification piece with this, it's actually a commitment to, okay, what happened to harm the relationship, and then how do we, rebuild up that trust if possible. And getting that accurate information and getting there takes time. There is no instant easy gratification to this. Right. Before we move on, are there any staff that want to share any reflections from Vaughn and Bryn, Karen, or Mark?
Hi, Savion.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. My son's texting me too, wants to know what I'm making for dinner. Okay, so a couple of things that really each time I'm learning as well, and as I'm guiding multiple teams throughout the district around this work and around safety and security, a couple of things that even highlighted more today is around the student awareness and empowerment and power. To me, that is something of a part of a plan that we sometimes forget. We add it on as a last add-on, but it should be really in the center of the plan that we develop. I heard a commitment from the board and MMSD for time, place, and space around the RJ work. It's important that that is front and center. The importance of really thinking about it in a long term, 3 to 5 years. And I heard like the research that was really interested to read a little bit more about that and other school districts, and really mapping out a plan that's strategic. It's investment behind it, and it involves, families and students around it. And then I like tonight where there was a focus on board commitment. So that was the newest one on my list. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Those were my things that spoke to me tonight. Thank you.
So are you cooking, Karen?
No. No, I wish I could. No, not that good at it.
Yeah, leftover Taco Tuesday or Taco Thursday, what happened?
Yeah.
I guess what I'd like to say on my end is I agree with everybody in the room. I think that we need to find a different way of doing things. The old way just isn't working. And we need to find different ways. And I especially like what Lori said about slowing things down. We really need to slow down and think before we before we start involving things that are going to alter a kid's life for the rest of their life. And then as somebody else said too, they are kids, and we have to remember that. I mean, they are kids. And, to jam a kid up for the rest of their life or something that, they can be corrected, it should be done. And I I wholeheartedly agree that it's time. It's time for a change. It's time to start looking at things a lot differently and start thinking outside the box. And I'd be very interested to see what other cities are doing and what other school districts are doing, because I know everybody can't be doing the same thing.
Hey, Savion, I'll just
Gina?
add that what I heard a lot, and what, I also know from my time in the school district, working at Toki Middle School, at Shank Elementary, doing restorative justice in both those places. Just knowing what was lifted up, I heard a lot of is just, we need the time and the space to not only do this work, but to do it well. And I think that this group is an actual opportunity to make some change. Like, we hear a lot about, we need this and we need that. Well, let's start to operationalize that. I know we have a few meetings left that we're really going to start digging into budget and policy. And I just think that what I'm hearing is the time, the space. We've got school-based people really wanting to do this work and feeling like they are pulled in so many different directions. And so this is, I think, a great opportunity to actually make some change.
Thank you. People wear a lot of different hats, so it sounds like we got to pull some of those hats back. All right, we're gonna move forward with the next slide. So we have some homework, even in virtual. For the forthcoming meeting, 2 days after November 3rd, review current policy for 4147 and start thinking about thoughts about how this policy can support and reflect restorative justice philosophies and equitable school safety and climate. What standards do we want to have in place to hold ourselves accountable as adults? And what standard, in starting to incorporate student voice, what standards do students want to hold themselves to in this regard? And then, more practical of what needs to be revised, added, or taken out. And something that really struck with me is our need to take our time with this one, because no one person's development or progress is linear, and we need to allow the space for students to make mistakes, or sometimes we need multiple chances to learn something. So, and then we're just going to review a draft of the next agenda. So, one, is there anything folks think we should add? Two, if you think of something after this meeting, please feel free to email us. We don't necessarily post the agenda until a few days before the meetings, so we have that flexibility.
Bianca, are you there? Say, Bianca, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Coach.
Bianca, we were supposed to be able to sit down and have a conversation, and I'm more than willing to learn from you. So I just want to make sure I extend that again. I would like to sit down and learn. And I think the last time we talked, we left that open that we would eventually try to find a space where we could sit down and talk. I don't know if you still want to, but I would very much like to.
I am not sure if she's still in the meeting, but
can someone please communicate that to her? For that matter, anybody from Freedom Inc. I very much need to just want to learn and basically increase my level of insight to what we're trying to do here and what we're trying to do in the correct way. I have served and I will serve again.
I believe she emailed me earlier. Yes, she did. Looking for your email, and I'll pass it on to her.
No, don't pass it on. I'll give it to her. I got it.
Thank you for your vulnerability and voice, Coach. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, this is just the draft agenda. Do some thinking. If you have anything you think we should add, feel free to email us over the next week or so. We can figure out how to get that added. Before we close out, we do have to review and approve meeting minutes from the previous meeting. So let me pull that up right quick.
Fabian, can I share that with the committee just for a second? I just want to show them where I'm going in Board Docs to get it.
Got it.
Hopefully everyone can see this is the landing page for Board Docs. The meeting that we're talking about right now is right here, safety and security in the meetings box. I'm just clicking on it. It opens it up to this second landing page that tells a little bit about when and where. And right down here is the icon that I refer to in my emails, view the agenda. When you do that, you can see all the items on the agenda that are numbered in black here on the left. You can see these little icons here that indicate there's paper associated with that. Like if I look at that and open it, I can click on that and it opens it up in my browser. So that's as easy as it is, just a matter of getting into it. The minutes are right here, and you just click on the link and you can see them. I just wanted to show you where it is. Thank you so much.
All right, one moment. I move that the minutes from the Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee meeting dated October 8th, 2020 be approved. Can I please get a second?
Second.
I'm sorry,
All
who
right.
was that?
Who said aye?
I'm sorry, who seconded? I didn't hear that.
It was Coach Assad, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand, whichever you prefer.
Aye.
Aye.
Got to watch the debate. Let's get it going.
I am not watching that.
Thank you.
Not good for my blood pressure. All right. I move to adjourn. Can I get a motion and a second?
So move.
Second, Savian. All right. All those in favor, aye.
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 All right. We're done. Let's go eat.
Bye, Patrice.
Good night.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
All right,
Cynthia.
Stephanie.